Alright guys, so we're back. My plan for this week is to I kind of want it to be like a catch-all type week. I'm gonna go over the texture XYZ stuff since that got cut last week. I'll go over some of this clothing stuff again. I do have one video complete about like how I got to this point, or pretty close to this point, that I've already recorded. It's about half an hour again, and I'll pass that off to Ryan probably early next week. And I'm going to make one more um, for the clothing as well. So we should have enough clothing and face and tertiary detail videos combined with like the in-class stuff and the supplementary videos to cover most questions, I think. But of course, if people still have other questions about how certain things are done, then I'll be happy to go over them. I did get a few questions about this particular model last night after I posted it. So let's see here. The clothes was a big the how I got the fuzzy look was a big question. So it's what we went over earlier. I have a surface noise, so I should start by saying this was exported from Marvelous Designer, and then I resculpted a bunch of cloth folds and added some like little details here and there, and then which will be in the other video, but I can probably go over a little bit of that here if we have time today. And then under the surface noise over here, I've loaded in an alpha, and it's just like kind of a wool alpha, and it's using the UVs. So because I've exported from Marvelous Designer and I use that workflow I showed you guys, the model does have UVs. And then you have a color blend swatch here, and it will blend basically the color of the alpha on top. So with nothing, it just looks like this. But when you start to blend the color, it looks pretty nice because it's getting a little bit of like depth to it and breakup. And then just adjusting the strength and the scale of it is basically how I got that. Now, there is more to the look of it though than just the surface noise. So the second thing I did, let's see if I can do this here. I took my basic material, right? And what I've done is gone to material, and then you open your modifiers palette there, and then you have copy shader. So you hit copy shader, all right? Then you can go to, I went to my double shade, but you can go to your triple shade as well and just turn off one of the slots. So I'll still go to triple shade. And then you see you have 3 empty slots here, or 3 open slots under the modifiers. You don't need slot 3, so you can just turn that off. All right. And then what you're going to do is with slot 1 selected, you're going to go paste shader. And then with slot 2 selected, you're going to go paste shader. All right. So the trick here is to get a nice Fresnel on the clothing, right? And how to do that is in the second shader slot, you're going to turn your diffuse all the way up. It's going to be really bright, okay? And then in your mixer, you're going to turn your Fresnel all the way up, all right? So basically what you have now is slot 1 is your basic material, all right? Slot 2 is contributing diffuse color, but only on only like the Fresnel, all right, because you've cranked that all the way up. So what it kind of gives you is this nice like fall off on the back. There's no diffuse color in the front. It's just in the back here. So that's basically what I've done for this this shader right here on his clothing. So you can even see the little shader ball, how it has that like nice like rim light. It kind of looks fuzzy. So that's what's going on with this cloth. So it's a combination of the surface noise and just that shader. And of course, it's really only for preview purposes or like for ZBrush renders, because in the game engine, you're going to have your is the shader for working detail or for render? I use it I use it while I'm working on it, right? Like the closer I can get my material to look like the final material while I'm working, the better. Now what I will do from time to time, you probably saw me doing it when I originally shared my screen, take off the noise, because sometimes I want to see like exactly what I'm doing here, and a lot of times the noise will cover that up. it's good if you're going to use noise. So there's two good reasons to use this noise. One, it makes your little renders pretty, right? But two, when you go into your game engine and say you tile over the fabric layer, the detail layer, right? So say you have a pair of jeans or you have this kind of thing, then basically you're going to have a better representation of your final model. So if I bring this into Marmoset right now and like bake all my normals, and then I throw a tiling detail layer on top of Marmoset, right? It's going to kind of covers up some of your details. So I like to sculpt both ways. I like to turn this surface detail on once in a while, just so I can see if I need to push, any of these little details a little more so they show up. And you might not be able to see that just by doing that. It's kind of hard to visualize how strong you have to make details sometimes. So right now, if I hit my noise button, I can already tell, I'm not done with this yet, I can already tell that I want this seam right here to be different. I don't like the way it doesn't show up. I'd rather have it be like one of these arm seams where it's kind of like a double fold up against each other. So there's just little things like that. So it's good to toggle the noise on and off if you are going that route. So I think you'll get a better representation of the final in-engine version doing that. All right. So that's basically how I've done that shading. Everything else on this cloth is everything that we've talked about. It's just Marvelous Designer, exported, sculpting what you need, adding some details, and that's really it. Let's see if I have the actual. I should have the Marvelous Designer, the default one somewhere. Yes, that's what I exported from Marvelous. So you can see that I didn't like how his ribs were showing here. So I changed a bunch of like different folds and stuff in there. And I just did that from, a little bit of fold knowledge and some reference. So like when we talk about folds, I remember mentioning earlier, or it might have been in the video, but a lot of times you're going to get these like kind of diamond type patterns. So look for that. Sometimes they're a little more subtle, but look for that in your references because you'll notice a lot of it. Okay, so that is that guy so far. Now let's talk about the head for a minute. So I uploaded those videos for you, and hopefully you guys have to watch them. So we're at a place now with the head where I'm pretty happy with the basic forms, right? Like I'm probably not. I'll still do the asymmetry pass, but I'm probably not going to go in and make any like huge changes. I'm not going to make his mouth like super skinny or anything. I'm pretty happy with the way everything's laid out. It's only as a preview, Ricard. Only as a preview. I'm not going to apply it. Let's see here. So. And I encourage, if anyone's going to do when they get to the tertiary detail stuff, I encourage you to get to a point with your head where you're pretty comfortable you're not going to have to make too many changes, because every big change I make at this point is going to stretch tertiary detail. Now, obviously, if I do this, like, hold on a second. I'm not worried, like, if I have to go in and, like, say, like, I need his jaw to be a bit wider. That's not really going to stretch the detail too much, right? But if you need to say you want, I don't know, his forehead wrinkles here to be down a little further. Well, that's going to start stretching stuff, right? So you just got to kind of figure, like, what am I, just give it some forethought, I guess is what I'm saying. Just try to make sure that you're happy with that you're happy with all the shapes and everything. And if you think something might need to change, ask yourself, can I change this later without affecting my tertiary details, or is it something that I should change now, right? So obviously, again, I don't want to go in and start moving like his nasolabial folds around, because that's probably going to stretch some pretty obvious details. But again, if I were to say, like, just grab his head here and make it wider, I mean, that's not really going to hurt my details too badly. So it's like, if you have like very, very large, soft changes, generally it's going to be okay. The smaller the change, right, the more you're going to notice the stretching. It's kind of it's really hard to explain, but I think once you guys once you guys start doing it, you'll understand it a bit more. So anyway, I got this head to where I want it, and now I'm going to drop it into Mari. Now I'm not done with all the wrinkles or anything, but those are something that once I have the tertiary details projected, I'll get some happy accidents, and I'll kind of also have a good idea of how deep I want to make them. But I have the general layout of where I want the wrinkles to fall, right? And you'll notice that I've left the lips, so I'm going to leave that pretty much totally up to the displacement maps. But the forehead wrinkles and everything, you can see them in there, and I'm pretty happy with that. So what I'm going to do is drop this subdivision down to, let's see, about 250, 260,000 triangles, or sorry, faces. And for you guys, it depends on your computer, really, what it can handle. I drop it to this level because I still want to see like where the wrinkles are and get as much information in Mari as possible. But if your computer can't handle it, like I could easily go back down to like this and still use that. It's just up to your specifications. So I would try a couple different exports and just see how responsive your machine is and what works best for you. Yeah, I'm gonna do a whole hair lesson, but I'll probably use, for the lesson, I might not use this head. I might use the one I've already been working on just because it's so much further along and it'll be easier to demonstrate. But I do plan on giving this guy hair. I just don't know if I can do it in the time the class will allow because the hair takes quite a while. So, all right. But yes, we'll definitely go over hair. All right. So what I'm going to do is export this guy. When you export him, you don't need groups, you don't need subgroups. I usually keep merge UV chords on, at least for Mari. So that's kind of just my simple export options for this. I'm going to export him, and just see I have level 4 head here, so I'm just going to export that. All right. So that is, there's some hair right there. So that is step 1. Step 2 is you're going to need some displacement maps. Now, Jeremy's been nice enough to hook me up with a bunch of displacement maps. So I have a few to choose from here. Face, forehead, nose. Just one sec. Let me see which one. All right. Female full face combined. So when you download from Texture XYZ, and this is all documented on their website, you're going to end up getting 3 images. And they're huge. All right. Let it load up here. Okay. So this image is called secondary, all right, I believe. Or this is straight up displays, but it's like the bigger details. And if you zoom in, you can see how crazy high res it is. Image size, it's like 17,000 by 18,000 triangles. Ooh, you're right. That's another thing. You do have to prepare UVs for the head, and I totally forgot to mention that. So I'll go back to that in a second. So I have done that already, and I just totally slipped my mind. All right. So you have these displacement maps, and they're all different varying levels of detail. So this is super small micro detail, and then you have the in between like tertiary detail, right? So if we look at all 3 of these here, you can kind of see the difference in size. Now the goal here is to project them all at once, because you don't want to project them separately, because for one, they'll never line up, and 2, that's just 3 times the work, right? But mostly because they won't line up. So what you want to do, so let's take all 3 of these. You want to combine them, and you want to have each one be its own channel. All right, so I'm going to make a new image, file, new, and it's going to be the same size as these. I have it written down somewhere, just a sec. Where have I written that? Oops, sorry, second. Maybe I don't have it written down. Image size, 17913. by 18472. Okay. So let's go File, New, and do 17913 by 18472. All right. What the shit? Oh, that's what I went wrong. Constraint proportions. 18472. All right. Now we're in business here. And you can actually, it doesn't really matter which one you put them in. So you can put secondary in green if you, it doesn't matter, as long as they're packed. So jump in here, grab all three of these, or my other one go. There it is. All right, so you're just gonna want to, so this is the secondary one, so I'll grab that one first, copy it, jump over to my channels here in this new one, and pop it in red. All right. I'll do the right, and then tail, pop it into blue. Now, if you go to RGB, you can see each channel is packed with your displacements, and now you can project it all at once, and it'll register 100% accurately with each other. So let's go back to our layers. You still have the one layer. So that's step one for getting these maps ready. Step two is basically Mari's only going to take a maximum, from what I understand, 16K by 16K images. So you're going to need to break this map up. Now, the best way I found to do that is just simply breaking it up into different like regions. So let's do the nose. So we'll crop it like so. And we'll go File, Save As, and we'll call it, you can call it like, you're gonna save it as a PSD, call it nose. I'm not gonna save it, because I already have them saved out. And then next one, you're gonna grab, say, like the face right here. Let's see what image size this is, just to make sure. Perfect. And then you're going to save this out as the face, and then you're going to do the same thing for the forehead area up here. So you end up with 3 maps, all right? And with those 3 maps, you'll be able to do the whole face. Now, oh, that's a good question, Ricard. Nathan. So I usually go in, and I don't really care if I'm using like a, say, so for this guy, for instance, I don't really care if I'm using like a 20-year-old female or a, a 50-year-old, 60-year-old man. It doesn't really matter to me. What I'm looking for is just interesting tertiary detail, right? So I do a lot of the secondary detail on my own. So it just depends. Also, I have mixed them up before. So maybe I really like the lips on this one. So maybe I'll use the lips of this 20-year-old female because they have really cool like creases in them. Or maybe I'll use the face of like this other person. So I tend to mix them up. But to answer your question, I just try to look for interesting details on the displacements. And Jeremy, like when he uploads the images, you preview them on the website, right? So you can they're watermarked, but you can like flip through them, so you can kind of look for interesting things in the face. You might be like, oh, this like person has like really cool cheeks, or really cool forehead that you might want to try. So that's kind of what I do. So for the reason I have this one though, so I really liked the I got this one because I liked the chin area, all like the divots in it, and the lip to me was like really cool, just like the different like creases in it. So that's why I got this one, and she was just, and sometimes it's good to have a displacement that doesn't have a lot of deep, like, so if you have a 60-year-old man, they might have like a lot of creases and weird stuff like baked right into the displacement. You might not want that, right? You might just want something very generic that you can use as like a coat for all your models, and then you go in and you add the interesting stuff later. Um, for the eye crease. I'll have to get back to that question, Jeff, so I'm not fully sure the eye crease you're talking about. The alpha 55, 50, I mean, what alpha is 55 and 58? Let me see, just a sec. Oh, 58. You mean like the little micro wrinkles? I will make those on top of what I add with texture XYZ. So I'll do both. Um, yeah, so there's always a combination of different things that I do, and it's not like I don't do the same thing over and over again. I always alter my workflow, and I always add detail. Like it's every head model I do is individual, right? I don't have a workflow that I always do ever. It's always changing. It's always like different techniques. And that's why when I teach these classes, sometimes I'm like, oh crap, what am I going to show them today? Because I definitely like I tend to be all over the place when I work. So I'm always trying different techniques. And another thing I wanted to touch upon too, and this is a little bit off topic, is that as artists, like especially character artists now in the industry, a lot of times modeling and texturing is separated. And the reason for that is there's just so many programs to be good at now. Or not even good at, just to like understand to do your job, right? So it used to be like, okay, you know, Maya and Photoshop, and you could be a character artist and text artist, right? And then it's like, okay, now you know Maya, ZBrush, and Photoshop. And it's like, okay, well now there's like Maya, ZBrush, Photoshop, Substance Painter, Mari, and the list just keeps going. And like then all like the little plugins, and the list just keeps getting bigger. And it's really hard for one person to kind of master all of those things. So even for me, like 'cause I'm doing the whole pipeline, like I won't touch Mari maybe like once, but every like 3 months, right? Or once every 2 months. Whenever I have to do like a head is when I go back to it. And then when I go back to it, you have to kind of knock off the rust every time, right? And there's software updates that come out and you're like, oh, there's this new feature. So it's just a lot to maintain. Um, so it's it's just becoming more difficult. So I guess my advice to you guys would be don't be super concerned with knowing every program inside and out. Obviously, that's an admirable thing and would probably help, but it's really difficult to do that. So just focus on what you really want to get good at, and then learn the pieces of the other programs that you feel are necessary. But in like that's what I do with Marvelous. That's what I do with Mari. In no way do I know Mari inside and out. It's a very big program. If you can do lots of stuff, I know enough of it to do what I need to do with it, which is texture and paint ahead, basically. And then after that, my knowledge kind of falls off. So, but if there's something that came out, a new feature that I wanted to know in it, I would definitely jump in and learn it. So you just have to kind of pick your battles when there's so much to absorb. Is it? No, it shouldn't take too long, to be honest. Like for me to learn what I wanted to do here, it took me like an afternoon, right? Like when I first started doing it, maybe a couple afternoons. Mari has a really good tutorials on their website for like beginners, and also Texture XYZ has some really good blog posts of like how people like set up their maps and stuff like that. So there's definitely the information there to supplement this class for sure, and you shouldn't have any trouble picking it up. Now there might be some little weird issues here and there, but you'll figure them out, or if you can't figure it out, ask me and I'll either have the answer or I'll try to find it. But for what we're doing here, it's not going to be crazy complicated. Would I advise showing textured models if we really only want to be a modeler? You know, it's nice. A nice textured model gets people's attention, but I wouldn't say it's necessary. Like if I'm looking to hire a modeler and I know they're just going to be modeling and they don't have any textured work, it doesn't matter to me, right? It doesn't matter at all. So it just depends on the studio. And it's sometimes like you don't know though if a studio is looking for someone that can do both, or if they're just looking for like a modeler or a texture artist specifically. Well, you know if they're looking for a texture artist because the job posting would be like texture artist, but sometimes character modeler means like both. It's just terminology is a little bit weird, so All right, let me jump back into here. Where was I? Oh, okay. So anyway, so you save those out into three things. All right. So that's basically the Photoshop contribution to this part. All right. Now, it was Ricardo brought up a good point about the UVs. We definitely need UVs on the head. All right. So if I jump back to this guy here and go down to the lowest level and do my texture, I'll show you the UVs. Oh, maybe it doesn't have UVs. I thought I did. Oh, sorry. You from UV map. Nope, these are the wrong UVs. Son of a. I have done this. Maybe I'm on the wrong head right now. So I have two heads in here. Head UV. Yep, I blew it. So let's go down here. More target polypaint. Let's just make sure texture map. There. Okay. So what I've done. Let me jump into Maya here real quick. Let me import this head. Big 4. Not that one. I just gotta remember where I saved it. I might just have to export it again. Head UV. Let's just open this head UV file. Yeah, we all know it's a learning edition. All right. So head UVs, window. So what I've done is I've brought my lowest guy in here, and they're not fancy UVs by any means, right? All I've done, like these aren't my final UVs. All I've tried to do is minimize stretching for the most part. And there is still stretching on the nose, on the mouth, here and there, but they should be decent for basically projection, right? Like, you can like adjust. So in the final UVs, I'd want to make sure his face had more UV space allocated, but for this, I just want everything to be nice and even for the most part. So let's see. I just never used the Go Z button. I've never been a big user of it for some reason. But since I went ahead and accidentally sculpted on the wrong model here, let me go ahead and grab this guy and export the head. Just call it head because we need these, no UVs. And file, import, desktop. All right. So these are actually the UVs that come with the ZBrush model. So if you guys use the ZBrush model, you can just use these. There's no reason not to. What I would suggest though is using the space a little better. And really, let's see here. You don't need, I think this is all the inside of the mouth here. Yeah, you don't need to give that much space because you're not going to be projecting inside the mouth. So, whoop. What am I got? What's going on here? Select those constraints off. There we go. So let's just shrink that up a bit. And I'm probably not going to do much detail from texture XYZ there, so I don't really care too much about that. So kind of stick them into place here. All right. And then what I want to do is I'm just going to grab the shell border and invert that selection. All right, and then just grab my relax brush here, relax everything out. There we go. So you have some basic UVs now. It should be fine. So one thing I do like to do, and I know I just kind of skimmed over this for just for a second there, but I don't want any stretching on this, or as little as possible. But I also don't want, like the back of the head to have more UV space than the nose. So a lot of times I'll just grab like the middle of the face and kind of, let's do a soft mod here. Just kind of go ahead and give it a little more room. It's going to cause some distortion, but whatever. All right, so you can see there's some stretching here, here, some coming up like along the back of the head for sure. But now we have more resolution for the nose and like a little bit more for the face here. And there's a bit of stretching, but because we're projecting straight down, it's not actually going to stretch our details. But you wouldn't really want to like try to paint on this UV map because then like it would look kind of weird. I feel like yeah, you don't want to overlap UVs. Yeah, you don't want to overlap UVs because then as soon as you do that, it's going to like mirror on the other side of the face, and you might not want that, right? Like part of the displacement map awesomeness of it is that you're getting like asymmetrical details basically for free. And as soon as you mirror the UVs, that's going to go away. So you can use, you can use the ZBrush UVs. For this other head that I had, I just laid them out on my own. Windows. I didn't actually look at the ZBrush UVs, but they're a good start for what we're doing here. So you could use those if you wanted to. Not a really big deal. I'm just going to continue to relax some of this stuff a bit more. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Take that off. That. Alright, so you can kind of go in and adjust. Basically, when I do UVs, I really just use these two tools up here for the most part. Yes, this is just for the projection phase. Yes, we're doing final retop with UVs, definitely. We'll probably do retopology a bit next week, actually. Yeah, so I'm cool with this. There's a little bit of stretching. I don't care too much. It's not going to affect the projection, so good to go. So let's go ahead and re-export this guy. I don't know, keep calling head no UVs just to keep it consistent. Alright. Back into the ZBrush. And let's import. Cool. So now if we check our UV map, we're good to go. Turn that off. Now we can go back up to level 4 here and re-export that guy. Level 4? Yeah. 4. Alright, so just to go over quickly, we've done some quick UVs, right? How do you recommend moving forward with UVs for the head if we used a different base mesh for the head? So what you're asking, Colleen, is if you don't have any preset UVs, how do you do that? Okay, I'll go back to Maya real quick. That's what I did with this other guy. So let's say you come into Maya and you have absolutely no UVs. Let me use the other one here. Headliner. Oh god, stupid shirt. Alright. So let's just say this guy has no UVs. All right, so normally how I start UVs is I'll go to UV, planar projection, and I'll do like an axis. So right now I'm going to do on the Z axis, so it should be straight on. All right, so what you end up getting is just like a straight on projection. I'm going to turn this thing off. And then basically what you're going to want to do is just cut him up in a way that is you're going to be able to use as a projection. So to start, I'll just grab the center line, select it, and I don't want to cut right down the middle of his face, so I'll deselect it right up until about there. All right, so select the top of the forehead, and go ahead and give it a split, which is, where's my thing here? This button with the two arrows going in opposite directions, so you split it. All right, and if you want, you can always show your, you can see your UV highlights there, so you can see there. Oh, somehow I missed this piece. There we go. All right, so it has a split on the back of the head. You'll probably want to go ahead and split the inside of the mouth out. So I'll find a loop that works. That looks pretty good. Chop that off. So now, if you just select one UV and hit to shell, it'll select one continuous shell. All right, so the mouth is out. You cut that right out of there. And you can kind of start just by doing a quick unwrap. So this little button right here, unfold, select it, make your brush bigger, unwrap it. All right, so that's the start. And then select this guy right here, which is optimized, so it'll help even out your UVs. Hey Jeff, is it saying that you have non-manifold geometry? Yeah, I'm not sure. You're gonna have to search that one up. If I can't see the screen, I'm not really sure what it could be. I've had errors before where I have non-manifold geometry, and simply I'll just go to Mesh, Cleanup, select non-manifold geometry, and hit Cleanup, and then try it again. That might solve your problems. But yeah, I'm not sure exactly what the issue is. So other things we can do here to optimize this a bit more, you can cut out the eyes, like the inside of the eyes here, so they have a bit more room to relax. So like just select the kind of continuous edges here. I'll just do one for now. All right, so cut that guy out. Gone. You can cut out the inners of the nose. You're going to want to make sure you're not having any overlapping, so you have to do a little bit of manual stuff in the corner here, just like that. And then you're going to kind of want to fit him all into the space. So, I mean, you're going to have distortion no matter what, unless you simply just do something like this. But if you just do this, you're basically losing a lot of resolution on your face, right? Like if you're projecting and you're doing, say, like an 8K projection, and then you just do something like this, then you're not using all the space, right? You're using like a quarter or less of that 8K space. So normally what I would like to do is try to maximize the resolution of the face to shell to a good point, something like this, and then try to go ahead and judge these areas in. Right now it looks like ass, but that's fine. Start pushing stuff in, like so. And then you can say, okay, let's select shell border. All right, and let's do the lower part here first. And then let's just do a quick pin. So you have these little pin icons, so it'll pin to the lowest right there. Let's go back to shell border again. Deselect all this. Let's pin this way. Perhaps that's too much. Pin, shell border, pin. Miss these guys. I must have something wrong with my mesh here. It doesn't want to respect that that is part of the thing. There we go. All right. And now you can just do to shell border and then invert your selection. And you can go back in and kind of do some relaxing here, some relaxing there. I don't like to leave my edges perfectly pinned like that. I'll tend to kind of go in and do a little bit of like a little bit stuff like that just to kind of help relax it a bit more. And you can kind of shrink it up a bit and fit it in there. You can also go to your unfold tool right here and adjust the iterations. So I'm going to do unfold constraint none, iterations, let's just keep it low. So there's a little bit at a time, as you can see. Let's do 50. Too much. 10. So you can kind of adjust the speed at which it's sensible, so you can tell when to stop a lot easier. So anyway, that's kind of the why not use UV Master for this? I prefer Maya. I feel like I have more control in Maya than I do in UV Master for sure. Since I can select the exact edges and unfold like how I want. It's just preference. You can use UV Master if you want. You can just keep optimizing these until you get them the way you want them. Again, you don't have to take up the entire space. Like this isn't the final UV, this is just for projection, so. Whoop. That's pretty good. So it's quick, it gets you where you need to be, and that's how I would kind of go about doing like the original projection if you have nothing there. Sorry, what was I going to say? Jeff, what version of Maya are you in? I'm also in 2016. It's weird to me that you don't have that icon. You could have this button collapsed right here. See this little middle thing? Is that the case? That's weird. I'm not sure what I'm not sure why that is. This is extension 2. So unless you have just the first extension, that might be the problem as well. No, it's not bonus tools. It's just the extent. This is just plain old extension 2. So, but those buttons are awesome. Like they've totally sped up my UV workflow in Maya. So if you can get extension 2, I would suggest it. Anyway, that's how I do those kind of like placeholder UVs for projection. They're by no means final UVs, like I said. I want to make that very clear. This is not final topology. This is simply for projecting. All right. All right. I'm just thinking about something for a minute. Okay, so now that we have this guy in here, we already exported him. I believe we did. Let me just do it again just to make sure. Yep. Okay. If you don't have extension 2, there's also the unfold option. There's other things like I used to not have. I've worked in Maya the past 5 years without any of those buttons, and I still preferred it over everything else for UVs. So you don't need them, but they are nice. So they just speed things up. All right, so if I jump, let's open up Mari here. Okay. So let's go to new session. All right. So you're going to want to name this guy. Let's just call it head example. All right. And it's going to ask you for geometry. So you can click your little arrow button and look for your dude that you just exported. So desktop. Look for head. All right. It's going to ask you a bunch of stuff. UV if available. So we have UVs. Selection sets, create from face groups. I'm going to ignore that. Multiple geometries per object. Merge geometry into one, of course. Root texture path. Let's go ahead and just put that into the desktop. Character creation, texture, Mari. Made that folder there. Okay. There's a bunch of color space things and channel stuff that it's asking. You don't need to set any of that stuff right now. You can set it for channel. So I'm just going to hit OK. If you want to see this color space, it's just asking you what like your default settings are. Monitor sRGB, color picking sRGB. I usually just leave that as is. If I haven't had any trouble leaving that to the default. So unless somebody's very technical or knows what they're doing when it comes to color space stuff in Mari, then I would just suggest leaving that to default. All right. So it's going to load up our guy here eventually. Oh, really? Oh, here we go. Here we go. Okay, so here we are in Mari. Now, right from the get-go, you're going to notice a couple things. Well, maybe you won't notice some, but I'm just going to explain them. You have all these tabs up here. Okay. When I'm projecting, when you're projecting, you're going to want to work in the ortho tab. Perspective, there's no reason, and you shouldn't use perspective when you're projecting. And then you can also see ortho and UV. I'll show you UV layout here, or just UV. But 99.9% of the time, for this process, I'm just working in the orthographic tab. Okay. If you look to your right-hand side over here, these are where you're going to set up a bunch of this is where you're going to import your images for the projections, where you're going to set up your channels, this is where you're going to do your layers and painting, everything. So first things first, I'm going to go ahead down here. Actually, first things first, I'm going to hit this channels button, and I'm going to make a new channel. So add channel. All right, and it's going to ask me some basic stuff here. So it remembers what I called my last channel, and my last channel is called secondary, meaning secondary form. So I'm just going to leave that as is, but you can name it whatever you want. I suggest naming it so it describes what you're about to paint. So you could say like tertiary detail, secondary detail, whatever you want, but just make sure it's clean and tidy. It's going to ask you the size of this channel. So we could go nuts and do like a 16K channel, but remember we're making a video game here, and even I feel like on some of like the highest res screenshots in video games right now, like if you think on like Uncharted 4 or something like that, like you're not looking at any 16K maps, so that's just way overkill. Even 8 is overkill, but I'm going to do 8 just so we have a bit of a buffer there in case, and leave it at that. Depth is going to be 16-bit, file space normal, color space is automatic linear, mask data automatic linear. Okay, so we now have our secondary channel, and what it's doing here is if you look at the layers at the bottom, it's created a base layer, and that base layer is kind of this gray color. When you're projecting these displacement maps, they look pretty gray when you're projecting them. So sometimes it's hard to tell if you've missed a spot. All right, so I suggest making a new layer that's a color that's very obvious. All right, so to do that, you're just going to click this little button right here, Add Procedural Layer. Go to Basic, click color. It's going to add a new layer. And then to choose that color, you kind of just pick this and pick whatever color you want. So I'm going to pick blue, and now we're good. So now we have this bright blue layer. So if we're missing something, would be very obvious. Now I'm going to check out this painting tab over here, all right? So it's going to have our paint buffer. So basically the way Mari works, you're not painting. Like if you think about Mudbox or ZBrush when you're painting on the model, right? Like you're painting and then it's there. In Mari, you're painting to a buffer, and then you have to tell that buffer when to actually drop it to the model. So the way I first understood this is when I think about like Projection Master and ZBrush. I don't know if you guys have ever used that, but you turn on Projection Master, you put the detail down, and then you say like drop detail onto the model, right? So it's basically the same thing. I don't know if it's actually the same under the hood technically, but it's just be aware that whatever you're doing isn't applied to your model until you say, hey, apply this to your model. And then it's projected on. So it's going to be projected from like a flat plane, okay? It's not going to and so it'll distort around the edges as well. So just something to be aware of. Anyway, my buffer size is going to be, you'll see other people cranking up this buffer size to like 8K or bigger. Like I said, the max resolution for this channel is 8K. I don't think I need a buffer size bigger than 4K, and I've noticed that when I go above that, things start to slow down a bit. So 4K for me is definitely big enough to project like parts of this face. And then let's see here. So we'll keep that at that. And then, okay. Image by linear. Okay, we're good here for the paint buffer 4K. Okay, we're good. All right. So let's jump back over to our layers. Actually, there's one more thing I want to show you guys under projection. Something I learned last class, and now I don't know how I lived without it. You have an edge mask right here, okay? And this is how you turn it on and off. Basically what that's doing is it's going to mask anything on a certain angle, okay? And you can't see it right now, but if you hit this little thing, mask preview enabled, it shows you, all right? So let's zoom in here. So whatever's red, you won't be able to project on. And obviously, as you turn the camera, it changes because it's all based on angles. And you can change those angles, fall off start, fall off end. So it just depends on what you're projecting. So if, say, I'm trying to project this on this nose here, and I really don't want it to like stretch. Say I'm projecting right here, I don't want it to stretch and like make a mess over here. You can adjust this kind of stuff and make sure that it won't do that. So that's that. So you can just turn that on and off. So this is enabling it. This is just visualizing it. So right now it's still on. You just can't see it. So it's up to you to kind of keep track of where that is if you're having problems. But normally it's a good thing to use, especially when you're kind of, I usually do a first pass of like big projections. I don't really care if it's messy, and then I'll go in and do smaller ones and tighten it up over several layers. And the tighter I get and the more precise I have to be with my projections, the more I'll start using this feature right here. But for now, I'm just trying to turn it off. Okay. So here we are. Another thing I want to show you guys is under your shaders shelf, you have your current channel, your basically default shader that's on this guy. So you might want to adjust the specularity. I do that from time to time just to see like how everything's looking. Sometimes it's hard to tell what's in the map you're projecting and what's an actual specular highlight. So every once in a while I'll come in here and adjust this just to see what I'm actually doing. But the 0.2 is a pretty good default to start with. All right, cool. Now let's go back to channels. All right, so we have our secondary channel. We set our paint buffer. We have our first layer here, color. We're gonna make one more new layer. Oh, sorry, new layer. All right, we're gonna call this, let's just call it like projection. Cool. All right. So we have to import our files that we want to project. All right. So that's where our image manager comes into play. So you're gonna open some files here. E. And like I said, I've previously saved these out. So I'm just gonna grab this female 20s. So here's the face, forehead, and nose that I told you about. So select them all. Alpha, pre-multiply. Yep. Color space, automatic, sRGB. Just gonna leave all that as is. Let it load. Can't remember if I wanted to import those as linear or sRGB, but we'll just keep it as sRGB right now. Like I said, I do this like once every 3 months, so every time I do it, I'm like, what was my workflow for this last time? Okay, so now we have our dude, and we have our images in. So I usually start with this projection with the cheeks, and then I'll wrap around to the other cheek, and then I'll do front, all right? And then I kind of work my way around like doing that. So let's go ahead here. So first things first, if you click L, it's going to bring up a little link to your image manager there, and you're going to pick which one you want, okay? Let's do face. Oh, sorry. You're going to want to be on your paint through images onto the canvas brush. It's your projection brush, basically. And now we can hit L. Use the shortcut for that brush. Oops. Don't double click it because it tries to open it up. Close it. No. Just give it a sec. I'll just continue talking. So this happens to me from time to time. Sometimes I get like a little jumpy and then I'll start double clicking stuff. You do not need to double click these things because see it just opens it in like an image manager kind of thing. You just need to single click it. All right. Oh, it's still slow. There we go. So you can see how big these images actually are and it's loaded in. And then let's see here. Control and right click, or sorry, left click. You can rotate, shift, left click, you can move it. If you hold shift and control, you can scale it. Plus scale it down. As I move my model, you can see that it disappears, which is nice. There we go. So when I do this kind of stuff, I like to try to make sure that I'm pretty close to the correct scale. So if you look, I'll try to like measure the mouth up quite a few times, and like the size of the cheek right now, I'm like a little bit too big for this guy. So like the bottom of the eye, like I just want to make sure that I'm not projecting this detail like way too big, if that makes sense. So I'm just reading through the chats. Yeah, use it once every character. That's basically it. Okay, now. So you can see that we're like a little bit closer to like the size we want here. Maybe go a little bit smaller. Sometimes it's, sometimes I'll like kind of exaggerate the size of the pore details just because like through all the information, like when you bake it out, you're baking normal maps, you're throwing it in an engine, you're doing subsurface scattering, you're adding like tile pore maps, stuff gets lost, like detail gets lost and harder to see. Sometimes I will kind of purposely make these projections like just a little bit bigger than I feel like they should be, just so they have a little more punch to them, so you can see them. All right, so let's turn this to the side here. Let's get this lined up to how we want it. Right there, looks pretty good. All right. Some other things I wanted to mention. Let me think here for a minute. Shift minus? Yeah, Shift minus and Shift plus will change it won't change the projection, but it'll change the transparency of this image so you can see a little bit better. And then brackets. No, sorry, what am I looking for here? Why can't I find it? Okay, yeah, so I actually changed the, and then also like minus and plus without shift will change your brush size. All right, that's what I was trying to find. All right, and so now you have it all lined up, you can basically just start painting. What did I do now? There we go. So the bracket button changes the intensity. You're just painting it on, painting it down. I don't care that there's some gray overhang there because that's going to go away later. Like I said, these first passes are usually just like big overall kind of like passes that will cover, right? Just get it around the eye here. Doesn't be perfect. I don't care if there's any stretching right now. I'm just trying to fill up space. All right. Now, I'll show you some of the things that I don't always do this right off the bat. You can, like, once before you drop it to canvas, you can basically erase things. So, like, say I want to erase some of this stuff that you've laid down. Go ahead and do that. No, sorry, not canvas. Before you drop to your model. Say I don't want all this extra stuff here. Say you want to warp some of the image to fit them a little better. Got your little warp tool here, right? It's kind of like a Photoshop warp. You can add more divisions by using the up and down arrows. So let's say we want to bring this down a bit more here. Go ahead and do that just to fit it a bit better. All right, cool. And back to you. And now if you want to drop it, there's a few ways. You can adjust how you do this as well with like the painting tab, or maybe it's in the projection tab. I don't remember now. I'll have to look. But you either just move your model or just hit Alt, and it will drop it to your model. All right, so it is dropped. As you can see, there it is. So you can see I missed a little spot there, but that's okay. Now to the other side. So now maybe I'll go in, just so I don't want to like overlap too much over here. I'll go into my projection and turn on the what you call it, the edge masking. All right, so we'll just do something like that. So I just actually made some arm bandages at work, and I did them in Maya. I basically took the arm, and then I just did a quad draw. It was kind of crappy actually. I just did a quad draw in a bunch of different places, and then eventually connected them all. It wasn't like anything fancy, but it worked out pretty good in the end. All right, so let's go ahead and bring this image back. That's kind of like riding a bike a little bit. So again, just aligning. Looks pretty close. Yeah, that should do. And it's a very similar kind of like workflow when I'm projecting color. All right. You don't have to purchase albedo textures. I would suggest you do because they're super nice, but it's not like a necessity. You can hand paint, you can grab images off 3ds K, there's a whole bunch of different ways to do it. Hand painting for me is cool, but it definitely takes the longest. Usually my method is to start with like an albedo color or some image projections from like 3ds K or something like that, and then hand paint over top of that what I need. So it's not like it's kind of like a mix of projection and hand painting. I never usually, if I don't have to, I won't start from straight up hand painting. All right. So again, let's drop that. Okay. And let's go ahead and do, so I'll do like sides like that, and then I'll kind of do like a more 3/4 one as well. It's a little not quite as angled. Try to line up the corner of the mouth a bit here. All right. You can see I kind of stamp out some of my old details. I don't really care too much about that right now at this point. All right. Side. So I should mention too that this process, although very nice and gives great results, for me it is much slower than just throwing down some alphas in ZBrush. And the reason for that is because I take my time. I mean, maybe it's not slow for everybody, but I take my time um, with projections to try to make sure they're very clean. So it just depends on the person, I think. Hey Jeff, no matter what, you're not going to get those color textures to align with those pores. Not that I know of. A lot of times what I'll do is just take the pores from the sculpt and use that as like a multiply. All right, so let's do this. Okay, now let's do a front one, just cover some ground here. I'm going to leave the lips for now. Corners of the mouth a little bit here. So usually I'll do stuff like lips on its own layer, things like that. All right, so let's switch it up to the nose here. So L and nose. So you can see the nose is unfolded pretty nicely here. So the actual size of some of these can be deceiving, right? Because remember the whole nose is unfolded here, so it might look big right now, but it's the whole nose unwrapped, so that's why. All the way up. Small, maybe. All right, let's lay that down. See, Nathan, most of the people I know in the industry are the opposite of that. A lot of people now are just specializing in like modeling. Just depends on the studio's workflow and what works for them, but. Um, 1 second. Questions. How many textures did I prepare? Complete head, nose. Head, nose, forehead. That's it. That's all you need. That's all there is, actually. So that picture of that girl with like the crinkly fabric, it's got to be like a fabric type. I'm not sure what that would be, but you might get better luck sculpting some of that. Okay, let's go to the front. So and this is when the masking really kind of starts to help out quite a bit here. So I would have said the same thing about sculpting like before I was in the industry, but now I love that I get to break it up into a bunch of different steps because I get sick of just doing one thing all the time. All right. So the ear, I project, but I sculpt a lot. I mean, I hand paint a lot of it too because they're just so hard to project properly. A little pass on this nose here. Alright. So I'm going to do the forehead and lips real quick, and then I'm just going to try to move on because, I mean, this like literally would take me a long time to actually do this. So I just want to show you guys like the workflow, and then you guys can spend time actually going in and like tailoring it to your needs. Alright, so for the forehead, select that. Do his thing. Alright, so here's the forehead. And again, I'll start from the sides here. Now you can see that I'm not going to have enough information to do the entire top of the head. You know, there's some gaps here and there. And that's where I'll kind of go in and supplement with like my surface mimic stuff back in ZBrush. So even when I do the texture XYZ stuff, it's still a combination of other methods. So it's kind of good to know them all here. Kind of paint this in for now. Yeah, some of the tiling stuff is really nice. I wouldn't say it's a necessity for this, but if you have extra money to blow, like there's lots of cool stuff there. Like the faces are good, the tiling stuff is good, the hands are awesome. Yeah, the chest stuff is pretty cool. Like it's all good stuff. It's all very useful. It's just you kind of have, it's expensive, so you kind of got to prioritize what you want. I think as character artists, the most useful stuff is probably the faces, the tiling skin stuff for the faces, and probably the hands. Those are really what you see most of when you're doing character art, is those things. I'm actually really excited, guys, next week to do UVs and topology. Oh, it's so much fun. It's not fun, but it's a necessity. But it'll be a good one. I think people enjoyed the UV class last time because the UV and topology, just because it's something it's not like something that's really often shown. You know, like you don't have to go to Gnomon and be like, oh, check out this sweet topology video. Like no one ever makes those because they're super boring. But like it's good to kind of know and understand it. I don't think the eyebrow. I think the hair is in there. No, they don't shave the eyebrows. I'm pretty sure they do not. They do not. All right. Make the fart a little bit bigger. Actually, I probably should brought this down a bit more. Yeah, it's more like it. All right, let's drop that. All right. Now let's see. So let's just get the top of our eyes. Now these eyelids here on this scan are closed, it looks like, but I'm just gonna try to get some of that like, some of that like diagonal skin there. Let me turn this off. Surprised my dog's being quiet. He was so noisy all morning. I was like, oh, it's gonna be a good time, and he's not. He's made a peep. He's a good boy. All right, cool. Let me read this. Hold on. Is your workflow always texture XYZ and system hand sculpting like my goals? Create hyperrealistic characters because that's. So that's actually a good question, and I think it's relevant for everybody. Yeah, actually, I normally, well, because it's a personal work, I probably should have closed the eyes for this class. Yes, you're right. I normally would close the eyes about halfway for this stage, and open the mouth slightly to get inside the lips a bit. You can do that on a layer in ZBrush. After you do your UVs, it's not going to, and you actually might want to, okay, so everyone take note. Workflow-wise, two things I didn't do, and I should have done. I should have made a new layer in ZBrush, closed the eyes about halfway, and slightly opened the mouth. Then, all right, exported that to Maya, done my UVs with the eyes closed, okay? Then brought that back into ZBrush with the new UVs, okay? And that way, and then also done the projections on this model with the eyes half closed and mouth partly open, because that way you're gonna get, you're not gonna have any weird stuff, and you're definitely gonna be able to, like, get in the lips and get those eyelids closed. Now, do you guys need to do this for your models? No, because no one's ever going to see it. But if you were in a real production, right, like if you're working at Naughty Dog or something, you would definitely want to do that because the characters are going to be blinking and talking, and you don't want a bunch of weird artifacts and stretching, right? So I just want to put that out there. I'm sorry I didn't do that. I totally spaced on that one, but that's normally what you would do in a production. And get back to Nathan's question here. My workflow, my more modern workflow, yes, is normally texture XYZ, then surface mimic, and hand sculpting. Like I tend to use all three of those, and that will produce the best results. So surface mimic is like a filler for what I don't have, for the information I don't have from texture XYZ, or if I want to do something that like normally it's just an information to bridge a gap of information if I don't have something from texture XYZ. And then obviously hand sculpting, you can do all like the unique details that you want to do. And I would say that is going to get you closest to real life. Like scans are definitely a good place to start. And you could get your scan. You could use the pore data from a scan if you're using like an actual scanner, but you're still going to be missing some of that. The scan's not going to pick up everything, at least in my experience. And you still have to go in and like clean up and add some like interesting stuff and make the skin look better. There's so much you can add to a scan to make it look more real. And a lot of characters now will start with scans, and then you'll do something like a process called characterizing. So you'll basically like you get the scan of someone that has like some of the proportions you might want in your final character, and then you'll like sculpt a whole bunch, like a stronger jaw, like a bigger chin, or like whatever kind of interesting traits you want. So it's like a kind of like a base, and then you add all these interesting traits you want, and then you kind of go. You can either use the scan data as the pores, or you can do the texture XYZ process. There's more than one way to do it, but it all depends on what the final, like what the game or whatever you're working on, what you need the final result to be. So a lot of times at home, or when I'm doing personal projects, I don't have like a scan head to work with, and I don't really want to, right? It's more fun to sculpt something from scratch. So I'll sculpt it from scratch, but then I'll still do the texture XYZ, surface mimic stuff to do the pores, and that's normally my private kind of like workflow, what I do at home. In a studio, it all depends. Like someone might hand you a scan data and be like, "That's what we want it to look like. Make it better." And you're like, "Okay," and that's just what happens. But that's not always the case. Like the last few characters I've done, I've sculpted from scratch without scans at studios. So it all just depends on what's required. Hold hold on. Yeah, no stretching for the eyelids. That's just bad. You're right. All right, so I did that one eye there. Let's do this one. You can see how like I'm looking, like it's really hard to always find the exact data you need from the scans. So you can see that I'm just kind of filling up space with what I think should be there, which is fine. I mean, no one will ever be able to tell the difference. And even in like real scan data, I mean this is real scan data, but even in like if you're scanning someone's head with like a scanner, the scanner can't pick up everything. There's going to be like occluded areas and all sorts of stuff. So you need an artist to kind of go in there and make it better. All right, so that's that. Let's do the same kind of deal with, so at the middle of the nose I botched here, so let's kind of grab the nose again. Put that up against that piece. All right, so Alt. So just filling in some areas. Yeah, you protect on the closed eyes and open mouth. Yep. You don't have to open the mouth. You don't want to open the mouth very far. Just like maybe like a couple centimeters, just like kind of like a loose open, because you don't want to like distort the UVs around the side of the face, right? You don't want to stretch anything. They're directly on the hand. They're not separated. That's why I only close the eyes halfway. I mean, you can close the eyes all the way, but I kind of like to do like halves, like 50% closed, 50% mouth open, rather than full. Because remember, like a lot of times your characters are going to have an open eye as well, so it has to kind of look good on both ways. Do the bottom of this eye here real quick. So the eyelid can be a little bit difficult just to get everything just how you want it, but needs patience and a little bit of patience there. So keep an eye on the wrinkle directions when you're doing this kind of stuff, because you don't want to, because the UVs are like the projections are curved, right? Like the displacements are unfolded onto a UV map, so you got to remember that everything's a little bit like curved, so you got to rotate your image to kind of match that. Let's get up in here. I'm still just filling up areas on this first layer here. All right, let's drop that. And I'm going to show you guys a way to check this before taking it out of Mari in just a minute. You can do the lips first, and then I'll show you. See, it's got some eyelash information there, so I'm going to try to avoid that. Let's try to get this in the right spot. So you can see how this could take a long time to get it just the way you want it. Alright. Okay, so let's say okay with that for now. And let's grab. Now, I don't want to do the lips on another layer. I'm going to, but I just want to do a quick projection under the nose here. All right. We didn't use any surface or texture XYZ in Uncharted. Would it be noticeable? I mean, when I look at the ZBrush models there, I definitely feel it would be noticeable, but in actual like translation, when you translate it to the game, I don't know if it would be noticeable, to be honest. Maybe on some of the up close stuff, like some of the what do you call it? Cinematics, it might be noticeable. So I feel texture XYZ is more natural, and then you can res up the textures for those kinds of things. Yeah. Let's do a quick lip projection here before I jump to a new layer. I like to use it because, so I think I've mentioned this before. For me, when I'm creating art, right, especially for like a production, and if I have the time, I want to get the best result possible, right? Because you never know when someone's gonna be like, oh, we need this, commercial or like this cinematic or something, something, something. And if you aren't able to basically create, how do I word this? You want to create your models and all your art at the highest quality source, from the highest quality source content possible, right? That way, because it's easy to downgrade. It's easy to downrise if you need to, but it's harder to make things look better if it's already done, right? So you just do pick, like, that's why I like using Texture XYZ, because right now it's the best quality you can get for this kind of like workflow, and I feel it's still relevant for games, especially for like cinematics and stuff. At least I think it is, but I feel more comfortable using it and knowing that there might be a high-res like cinematic where you can see the super nice details than knowing that I don't have those details at all, and what I do have doesn't look as good. So it's just like a kind of like a peace of mind type thing. Is there a time frame that's considered acceptable for this non-personal work, but when you're in the job? For this, I think last time, I mean, it just depends. It really depends on the job and where you're at. Some companies will like say like, hey, like quality is the most important, and some will say like, hey, we just need to get this stuff done. So it really depends. So you can see for stuff like lips how helpful these like little like warp tools are in Mari. Awesome. I should turn this guy back on. All right, let's go ahead and drop that for now. All right, so let me turn this back off. All right, so I've got a quick lip projection. Now, this would basically be like my base kind of projected layer. There's obviously some shortcuts I've taken where I didn't like finish the bottom of the nose, and the lips are kind of still messy, but that's okay because you can always just jump. It's like Photoshop, right? You can just jump back to your layers and create a new layer, and we'll call this one like lips. And then I can do my final lips, on this layer. I will project the color information, but not in this lesson because we're not there yet. We don't want to do the color information until we have like our final UVs and everything. If that makes sense. So for this here, let's jump back to our. So I usually do this by I'll do like one lip at a time. Another thing I look for in this texture XYZ stuff, and this one definitely doesn't have it, is how straight the lips are on the scan. Because the straighter they are, the easier this is to do. When they're bent like this, it makes it a lot more difficult. So I got to warp all that up. So all I care about right now is the bottom lip. Let's go ahead and grab that. And we don't need, you can select these all at once. And tilt that up there. Actually, I don't mind like having it cross over the top lip a little bit. So you can kind of see the more picky you are with this kind of stuff, like usually the better the results are going to be. All right, now let's grab my eraser. Let's just kind of erase where it's crossing over there on top. All right. All right, now let's drop that. um, so the best, I don't know what the best texture XYZ map would be for you. I would just say like you can go in and click on each one, and then he'll like there'll be a display of each map like really big, and you can kind of pick. The things I look for, like I said, are like interesting like lip wrinkles or wrinkles that are like kind of universal. And like I didn't pick this one for this reason, but like if the mouth is straight, it's usually easier. So just kind of look at each one and pick. There's no wrong answer. They're all cool in their own way, but just whatever one works best for you, really. You can't go wrong. And another thing, so see how I just projected that lip straight? So it looks good from the front, but if you think about it, these wrinkles I feel are going in the wrong direction, right? See how they're kind of like going straight forward? Because you want them to like they're like radial wrinkles, right? So they should be coming out like this way. So it means I have to do each side as well. So I'll kind of do this, then tilt it a bit. Let me get this like radial. All right, now we can just go in and erase some of the stuff we don't want there. You can see that you'll have to go into ZBrush after and kind of clean up where, so I haven't done the, I didn't do the whole like mouth open thing, so I'm gonna have some cleanup issues. There we go, that looks pretty good. Alt. Yeah, but you can always, like I said, you can just move. Well, either you can ZBrush them out once you're done, or you can just kind of move the projection up a little bit and get rid of them yourself, right? Like it's there's always ways around like little things like that. So don't let eyelashes like, if you find something that's really cool and the only problem is eyelashes, don't worry too much about that. Excuse me. I'm just going to do this one side here as well. A bit of a warp. I don't know what I'd do without this warp. It's the best. Just kind of erasing what I don't want here. And again, that's kind of, there we go. And let's just drop that. So there, okay. So and then I would do the same thing with the top lip, and then there's still some like weird wiggly stuff right there that I might get rid of. This side looks pretty decent. But anyway, so I would go through the whole head and basically do that. And then there's a way to kind of check your work. If you go back to shaders, You can do a new shader if you want. So let's say we go to, I think I kind of like, the V-Ray material can be slow. Let's just do it anyway. All right, so it's going to switch our material here, right? Now, what you want to do is jump down to, where is it? Displacement. I'll open that up. Go up here. Where is it? Displacement map. So you have a displacement map slot in the shader. So you just click it, and what you want to do is pick what channel you have, right? So we have our secondary channel we've been working on. So you pick that, and it'll add it to your guy, and it'll look like ass. And then you go down here, and you open displacement, and you have to tell it the scale, basically, right? So right now it's 0.5, which is too strong. So say we go to 0.04, also quite strong. Let's try 0.005. There we go. So now you can see it a bit better. You can kind of see super slow though. Let's see if it's different. The shader sucks. It doesn't suck, just I'm not good with it. What does it have? Let's do displacement, secondary here. Okay, here we go. And then let's go to displacement by, let's go 0.004 on this one. There we go. So now you can kind of see how things are working. You can kind of see where seams are. It's run slow because it's displacing it. But you can kind of see where everything is. So there's some things I don't like. I mean, obviously there's some like a bunch of big bumps in the nose here, and there's some stretching going on. Let's see. And there's some weird seams, like there's like a line here and like a line here. You know, there's some things that need to be fixed. I don't like right now where he's getting these, like, her nasolabial fold was like a little closer to her mouth, so he's getting some of that, like right here, so I'll probably want to paint that out. Maybe same with right here. But for the most part, it's pretty cool because you can actually see what you're getting. So there, and you can just change your diffuse color too, so you don't see the blue. I kind of like looking at the other color though, but yeah. So anyway, you can preview stuff right in here, and there's I would suggest if that's something you're interested in, you'd have to kind of look up some documentation and just read about exactly what each shader does, how to get the best results out of each one. I don't do I'll do this to check for seams basically, or for if I'm missing. If something's all jacked up, I'll check it, but it's not something I sit down and like really tune in any way. I just kind of, it's like more like a check this, good to go, export kind of thing. So anyway, and if you want to go back to your original shader, you can just go back to, where is it here? Which one was it? Current channel. All right. So we're back to this guy, and now what we basically want to do is make a group. Let's make a new group. Not a layer mask. Where's my group button? Empty layer group. All right. So I'm just going to call this group secondary. And inside of it, I'm going to drop my two layers. So we now have this secondary group. And I'm going to add a, I'm not sure what you call these. Well, let's see. It's called a adjustment layer. And I'm going to go ahead and grab, and do a layer copy. Where is it? Copy channel. All right. And in this channel, you can say what, remember how we packed the green, blue, and red earlier? Channels. So now we can choose what we want to actually export. So here's the red channel. Here's the green channel, so smaller details, right? Actually, let me turn off this base color, these two things right here. Actually, leave the base color on. All right, so now we can go red channel, so it's the biggest details. Green, smaller, blue, those are like the little micro ones that we've projected, all right? Now I have found, if you're rendering like V-Ray or something like that, then all those little micro ones are awesome. But the when you're doing stuff like games, and if you're like pushing stuff in ZBrush around, you really don't need anything but like you definitely want this red channel. You might want the green a little bit to like pop the lips and stuff, but the blue is just going to make it look like noise. So what I'll do is I'll try to export the red and see how far I get with that, and then if I want to pop a little bit more stuff, I'll export the green channel. So having my adjustment or my copy channel layer right here, I'm going to go ahead and actually, let me bring that. I think if I could bring that down here, it does the whole thing as well. Oh. Yeah, okay. So let me go ahead and grab my layer, and I'm just going to export flattened. Actually, you know what? It's base color here. Let me do one more procedural layer, basic color. I'm going to make it there we go. I need to figure out what the actual value is. I can't remember what it is. It's 2. Is it 0.227? No, 27. All right. I think that's what I want. I think that's 50% gray, something like that. I'll have to double check that. Anyway, so let's go ahead and put this color in here too. All right. Get in there. Cool. No. There we go. All right. So now let's go ahead and export flatten. Sorry. So all I did there was I tried to make a 50% gray layer underneath, and then basically I want to export this whole like group as a flattened layer. So let's do export selected layers. Okay, and here we go. So we're gonna name it. Let's call it secondary displacement. Okay, it's a TIFF, and we're gonna switch this to where's my sRGB right here. Okay, alpha channels keep. We're going to put this, let's put it in texture Mari. Okay, now let's export all patches here. Oops, I blew it. I want to cancel that for a second. Want to export flattened. That's why I went to export by mistake. Export selected layers flattened. There we go. Okay. So Mari, secondary displays, blah blah blah. Let's do sRGB. Okay. Let's draw patches. All right. So we've exported that patch. Let's open it up in Photoshop. Let's go back to our desktop here. Let's go to texture, Mari. Let it open. So here's our displacement, as you can see. Now remember, this is only the one channel. This is just the red channel. So it's the biggest shapes. But really, this is all you really need. If you zoom in, you see it's pretty high res. It's an 8K map. The lips are cool. All right, so let's export this. Or save it as a PSD. Don't need the layers. Okay. Let's jump back into ZBrush here. All right, so back in ZBrush, there's several ways to apply this. Let's crank that up. All right, first things first, I'm going to import the actual texture we just created. Dumb. All right, hold on a second. Had this problem a couple times before. Image mode wants 8 bits. Okay. All right. Push. All right, so it's imported our displacement there. Now let's go ahead and invert that. And so method number 1 would be to go ahead and load up your displacement map over here under the displacement map slot. And then you can just tune your intensity. Oh, sorry, you need a texture map. Let's go create new. All white, there we go. So you can see how it kind of applies itself there. So you can adjust the intensity as you need. Super strong, inverted, just right. Oh, too strong. And you can see now that the reason I checked that stuff, I could see those lines. It's hard to see it in the actual color map, but you can definitely see it in what was I going to say? When you do the preview displacement in texture in Mari, you can definitely see these kind of like errors. So I'm still seeing them here. Obviously, I didn't fix them, but that's why I do that. You can kind of see basically what we're getting out of this. Now, it's not bad. It's nice and sharp, but you can see that if you don't need any details sharper than that, in my opinion. Anything sharper than this in ZBrush tends to look noisy. So that's why I usually really only use this, and if I want, I will sometimes export the tertiary one as well. Let's go ahead and do that back in Mari. To do that, you just reopen this, take your channel, set it to green, all right, and then again, just export, flattened, and then go ahead and let's name it tertiary. All right, I shall export that now. So like I said, this is method 1, and then what you're going to want to do is apply displacement map. So see how strong that is? It usually comes on stronger than what it's showing over here. So that's too strong. And it's really smart to do this on a layer, actually. So let's do a new layer. And let's take this to 0.0012. Try that, 0.0012. And then apply displacement. So there's your displacement now. Probably could have gone a bit stronger than that. So it's kind of a balancing act again, just like everything. And I guess if you really want to, you could go stronger and then just reduce the intensity of the layer. So that's probably the best way to do it, because then you have a lot of flexibility. But that's pretty good right there. And then you could always just morph target out what you don't want. So some things I really don't like. Like I wish I would have cleaned this node up before I imported this, but smooth that out there. It's dumb. Anyway, so now with this head, let's open up the tertiary one. So something happened on this one. let's go back to Mari. Looks like it's in raw. It's a raw export, possibly. Export. sRGB. There we go. Let's reopen. Tertiary update. Come on. Still saving. There we go. All right. This one just kind of like punch some of the details a little more. Yeah, Eric, I would definitely do that. So this is like my first pass. So instead of doing like what I showed you last week was like laying down the pores, the alpha stamps by hand. This just takes that pass over, and then I'll still apply a few alpha stamps by hand where the texture XYZ data isn't there. But then I go in and do like a whole giant pass of like, you know, like more adding wrinkles and things like that by hand. Mode 8-bit. Don't need no layers. All right, so it's saved, and now we can go back in here, make another new layer. And this is not like something you have to do. I'm just saying this is something that you could do if you wanted to get some more details in there. I already feel like the details are pretty strong, but let's go in here and do a import tertiary vertical. And I'm going to store a morph target. And I will also do a deformation, sorry, displacement map, tertiary. So you can see how much noisier it makes it. You see another area that I missed right there, so that's pretty sweet. So like, I definitely wouldn't really use this area much, but maybe I would do, say, like apply displacements. I would do a morph target. Let me think for a minute. I want to switch it. I want to, just thinking for a second here. Let's do layers. Target, switch. All right, let me go ahead and delete morph target, store morph layers, and turn this one off. All right, and make a new one. Your morph target brush at a low intensity here, and say maybe you just want to punch up some of these pores a little bit right here. It's a little strong. I don't think it's necessary for this model right now, but just showing you guys kind of like what you, if the lips could get a little more. But so now you can see I definitely wouldn't use the micro detail because I feel like that's just super overkill for ZBrush. There's some artifacts of the eyes up here. Now when I zoom out with this guy, I mean, he has a lot of like small little details, but he's missing a lot of yeah, I'd probably break it after this pass. You could also break it before this pass if you really want to. So I'm doing this as a demonstration, but I probably will go back and maybe redo a lot of stuff just because that's normally how I work. I'll do a demonstration, then I'll kind of do it on my own. But I would probably go back and do a bit of asymmetry before I do the projection, just so I can do less, distortion. Now, it's up to you if you want to do that, but there's nothing wrong with doing that. I think it's probably the way to go, actually. So now what I'll probably do here, let's make another new layer, and let's go ahead and do surface, noise. Let's jump in here. Right. Let's change the strength. That's a bit strong. And let's change the scale. Something like that, maybe. Okay. All right, let's hit OK. Surface. Let's apply that to the mesh. All right, so now we've got a bit more surface breakup under there as well. So, and then what I would do basically is, when I look at this, I feel like there's a lot of information that's too strong in places. So I'm going to turn off a bunch of layers here for a minute. Not that one, apparently. All right, this one. And I'm going to turn off that one. Morph target. Store morph target. And let's go back up and go ahead and turn on this one. What was it, this one? Yep, okay. So now we can go back on here. Let's grab our morph target brush. So this is where like the artistic stuff comes kind of back into play. Do sim while you're coding together, models, or do you sim different articles of self-coding? I sim them usually all together, but if I'm getting a lot of errors, I might sim them separately and then re-merge them together. So some areas where I feel like there's too much detail here, I'm just going to get rid of some of these strong skin details up here. Some of this nose is a little too weird for me, a little bumpy. I can go in and add my own details on there after. And this is where surface mimic comes in handy, right? Because you can go back in and add all the details you want. Some erasing stuff I don't want. Stuff where I feel like it's too strong. Also, like right here, some of the eyebrows got projected, so I'm going to get rid of some of that. Over here, you can see some eyebrows. Another good candidate for surface mimic stuff. And while my ultimate goal is to be able to like show people my work like super close up, that's not really where people are really going to be seeing it, right? Like, I guess that's not my ultimate goal. My ultimate goal is to show people my work from about this distance, right? I'm going to show off a face. So this is where I want to do a lot of the balancing from, right? Like, I don't want to go in and be like, oh, I'm going to fix all this so it's perfect. Like, I do want it to be as good as I can possibly get it, but that's not my main objective. My main objective is always to show it as, you know, a whole as much as possible. So, like, out at this distance. So this is normally where I do a lot of my balancing work between like details and stuff. If I find something too strong, I'll go in and kind of knock it back a bit. So for instance, I feel that the lip, like I don't like that tertiary detailing on the lip that I added. I think it's too much, so I'm going to take it out. Something like that looks better to me. And then I feel that some of this stuff around the mouth is getting a bit strong here. So like just you're the artist. You're using these tools. You're laying stuff down, right? It's up to you to decide whether or not like it's balanced well. And of course, right now all you're really seeing is a lot of small details on a smooth base. So it's going to go a long way to start going in and like start adding back in. So I said before, like sometimes some of these little details will overshadow like some of like the wrinkles and stuff, and you'll have to kind of go in and add them back in. So when you're making some of this stuff, you don't know how strong the small details are going to end up being, right? So it's hard to say like how strong you need to make them from the get-go. Try not to make any line too perfect. Maybe some of the deeper lip ones here. That's why I like using the XYZ lips, and I don't sculpt anything in there first, because like they're so much more realistic, but then you can always go in and like kind of push some of those extra wrinkles in a bit. And because I used the 20-year-old girl one, she doesn't have really any baked in like wrinkles, so I'm pretty free to just do what I want to do here. I don't have to like erase a whole lot of her existing wrinkles because she doesn't have any, which is nice. So you'll see how when you start adding that kind of stuff, it starts to balance out a little bit better. The best answer for that is like how well, and I suppose this kind of, well, for one, like just general anatomical proportions, if those are all jacked up, then it's just like bad no matter how fancy you get. But like I'm really drawn to like skin detail, not skin detail, but like the balancing of like form and like detail and all that. That's to me is like the biggest indicator of how skilled somebody is, because that takes a long time to like kind of like learn and rein in for people. Because like I remember when I first started doing like details of my models would be like super high res detail, and like my secondary forms are all jacked up and stuff like that. So like that kind of stuff takes like patience and like time to kind of like learn. And it's like I don't always put in all the details I want because I know it'll hurt the overall look. So sometimes, I mean, that's usually the biggest indicator of how skilled somebody is, in my opinion. So then you can kind of go in and start adding like this kind of stuff. So like the main ring, that's what I was saying before, it's another balance thing. Like if you look at the main wrinkles on people, like there's obviously all these little ones that we've just introduced through texture XYZ, but they're cut, like if you look at this side, they're covering up a lot of the big ones. So you just want to go back in there and make the big ones like stronger again, right? So they have to be sharper, deeper than the small ones, or else there's no correct balance between like large wrinkles and the small like tertiary tiny wrinkles. And of course, you can go in here and start adding like some really small, like little things if you want, just to get like a lot of realism out of everything. Come down the cheek from this side. And this is where it helps to have reference to see, like, so you're going to want to add the appropriate amount of wrinkles for whoever you're sculpting, you know, for whatever age they are, they're a man, they're a woman, like, do they smile a lot, do they have like a lot of smile lines, do they frown, like what are the wrinkles on their face, what should they look like, right? Do they smoke, do they have like a lot of the wrinkles like around their mouth? As you see, as you start adding like those lines and stuff, it starts to look a lot more balanced, right? Like it's not all just like tiny little details now coated on a mesh. I hate that. You got to add like the bigger kind of like wrinkles and stuff in there to make it look much more realistic. Especially if you're using something like I did, where it's like a 20-year-old woman on like a 50, 60-year-old man's face, you got to kind of go in there and do that. And it takes a while, but it is kind of fun to do this part. Especially after you've done all the texture XYZ stuff, which doesn't feel really artistic. It feels more like technical and like kind of like just like, oh, am I doing this right? Like, is this going to be right? But so far, it's always paid off for me. It's been an awesome workflow enhancer. Not to mention, I just make sure models look so much better. And then also, this is a time when I'll go in and look at my model from like this distance and be like, okay, I can inflate, you know, some of these areas a bit more just to get a bit more form and stuff. Right, so now when you zoom out, you can get a nice feeling of that eye bag there. Some quick lines back here. And of course, there would be a bunch of like wrinkles and stuff going on there. And I have to go in and like make all the forehead wrinkles real nice. So I'm not going to do the whole model. Like we don't have time to do the whole model, but like I kind of did the eye there, so you can get a picture of like what I'm talking about. With like adding some more details after, and then I'll show you how to kind of, oops, come on, you dumb brush. How to kind of merge the XYZ, not XYZ, the search limit stuffing with all this stuff. Look at this here. And another thing, I tell everyone to leave the lip ridge away. And this is why, part of the reason why is because once you get the detail on there, then you can kind of see how far you got to push it, rather than pushing it too far or not far enough right off the bat. Well, it's ridiculous. So now I can kind of go in and just push where I need to push a little bit. You can see how much of a mess it made of the inside of my mouth there. So I'll have to go in and actually like clean all that up, which is a bummer. Which is why you probably want to do it with an open mouth. So when I redo this, I'll probably open the mouth a bit. Some more wrinkles here. You know, this is a little strong for me right here, these pores. Just going to knock them back a little bit. Using my morph brush again. All right. Now I wanted to show you, I showed you this last week too, but again, you can use the same spray technique. So if I do, say placement is nice and low here, flow is pretty low. I start to go in and do some of this stuff. That's too strong. Turn lazy mouse on a bit. Turn the flow back up a bit more. There we go. So now I get some nice wrinkles coming on the cheeks. So you can see I still kind of do all this stuff. Even when I'm using texture XYZ, I never just let. It's always part of the workflow. Don't really need it right here though. Kind of wraps around the forehead there. And eventually I'll go into detail the neck. There's a good texture XYZ. You just kind of transpose master it up in ZBrush and make sure your topology is as even as you can get it. So there's some really good texture XYZ neck stuff too that I would suggest looking at. It's kind of nice and leathery looking. You can do it in Maya too, either way. Whatever way you're comfortable with. I usually just do it in ZBrush, but. So another thing, this guy's starting, like, he's kind of missing a little bit of. I just don't like how strong this turned out for some reason. So if this was like my final model, I'd go in and fix some of this stuff here. It's bugging me, but like mostly this top lip for some reason is bugging me. I'm liking this area around here, and I like this back here. I just don't like something about this got a little too like pushed and weird there. But anyway, you go into with your standard brush. You know, you can make some more moles and stuff. Whoop. I'll do its saving thing. Oh man, my shoulder is killing me. Oh, shut up, ZBrush. Hold on a second. This again. I gotta find where it's saving everything. I always forget. If anybody remembers where ZBrush saves its temp files, let me know. Because I totally forget, and I always forget. Pixelogic? No. I can't. I can't do anything in ZBrush. I have to go to let me think. I'm not going to close ZBrush because I lose the work. Yeah, it's under Documents. That's right. Documents. What the heck is that? Desktop. Documents. How is it? See users public. That's it. I'll try that one. That's what I want. Public documents, ZBrush data. I'm trying to find that now. And then users, public, documents. There it is. Boom. Thank you guys. Quick save. Fucking 10 gigs of quick save. Delete. And recycle. Yeah, I just always forget. I don't know why it puts it in my documents. Okay, there. Saved. Anyway, okay, so what was I gonna do? Oh yeah, I was gonna show you guys. So I always go into, and if I want, like, say, like a mole, you know, some moles to be stronger, I'll kind of go in and add them, you know, however I want them to be. I'm kind of going to do that. So you're doing your own thing, really. You're making the face your own. All you're using the surface mimic stuff for and texture XYZ stuff is just a way to break up the surface, right? Like, because people aren't smooth, and there's like, think about like a roughness value, right? Like, basically more roughness means like more light bouncing in different directions. And so you definitely need that sort of thing to make skin look realistic, right? And you can adjust roughness, and it's supposed to kind of like say like, hey, this surface is very like noisy, so light's flying everywhere, but you're never going to make skin look good without like a realistic pore distribution and the different like scales of pores in the face, and that's really what all the surface mimic and texture XYZ do for me, is they give it that surface like breakup, right? And gives the realistic difference in pore sizes. So I use it as like almost like a coating, like a wrapper, and then but I don't let it dictate like my model for me. I make sure I do all my wrinkles are by hand, and like little like, you know, like moles and all that kind of stuff are by hand. So if I look in here, so let's look at this guy's face for a minute here. And right now he's very nice and smooth on his cheek. I might want some sort of like extra, like break up here. So let's grab this and this and alpha modify. Let's do an RF radial fade. Let's take this back down. Actually, let me go back up one step again and do a morph target store. Morph target. Let me save this while I'm at it. Alright, so now if we go back down here to like level 4, and maybe we want to add some like, just holding Alt and just doing a little bit of like breakup in the cheek area here. I feel this. I think I showed you guys this last week a little bit, but this will be better demonstrations because hopefully my computer doesn't crash. So I'm just adding like a little bit of breakup with this extra. I'm holding Alt and like letting go of all like both, like back and forth, right? Just to add some like more like irregularities in the skin. Especially like in this area. I know it looks like crap right now, but just give it a second. Let's go back up to this higher level here. And grab our morph target and start getting rid of some of this stuff. So I just want like a bit of a subtle effect here and there, so it's not so perfect. And you can go on with your inflate. You can always like inflate between some of those areas a bit here and there. It's almost like a pockmark, right? Maybe he had some scarring or something at one point. You can add like little like cool little like scars like that if you need. Kind of cool. Alright, so you kind of have, just some like interesting skin detail there. Looks alright. Maybe too much. Maybe I just want a little bit. That's about it. You don't want your model to look overdone either, so maybe just get rid of that one there. So I'm okay with that. And then, like I talked about before, we can go to the surface mimic stuff. So let's go back to our standard brush, and let's import alphas. My alphas brush. Alphas. So let's go ahead and grab the top of the head, bald head shaved. And again, hit our surface button and an RF radial fade a bit. We can start. So remember, I do have the morph target saved, so we can blend these a little bit if we need to, but normally it works out pretty well. It's surprising how well like the two work together. It's not surprising, I mean, they're both scan data, but how nice the surface mimic and texture XYZ actually kind of work together here. I'm just going to add some. I like this forehead one, it's kind of bumpy on the eyebrows here. And that's kind of what I would do just for that.
Then I would do the surface mimicking stuff on the ears as well. The forehead one's pretty good for the ears. Not the forehead, sorry, the shaved head one's pretty good for the ears here, as you can see. Just gives it enough detail to not look undone. Alright. And go in and just kind of start adding some wrinkles to the neck here. You probably want to do this on the wrinkles to the neck, start on a lower subdivision level. Something like this. So not just wrinkles, they're like creases, right? So you don't just want like a carved in like wrinkle. And they tend to kind of go and turn down towards the sternum there, wrap around the neck. Again, this is something you'll want reference for if you plan on making like a wrinkly neck. I still have to go in and sculpt all these wrinkles around here, which I don't have reference for right now, so I'm not going to attempt it, but I want it to be like a little bit like a loose skin type deal. Just go up one step at a time and kind of define details you're trying to define. A lot of time these neck kind of wrinkles I'll inflate between them on the highest level a bit, just to get like a little bit of that like thick looking skin. I wasn't planning on doing teeth. Teeth are time consuming, and to get good ones, let me put it this way, if you're working at a game studio, they probably already have a set of teeth made that you can just use. So I think spending time in this class to make teeth would be a waste of our time, to be honest, because there's other things that we can go over that I feel are more important. Things that wouldn't be provided to you when you go to a studio, right? If that makes sense. Plus, you can just buy teeth on like TurboSquid probably for like $10, which I think a lot of studios end up doing, and then just repurposing them, like making them fit what they need and doing that way. So you can see I'm kind of just inflating a little bit of the wrinkles between the neck there, just to give it some detail. Obviously, don't pay attention under the chin, so I really haven't touched that yet. Take my standard brush here and kind of push that in a bit. Alright, so now we're getting some cool neck wrinkles there. And they would go all the way around the back and kind of cross hatch like this. I'm not going to bother with that right now. But you would have a few kind of cross ones like this too as well, just from just the way the necks bend and everything. Alright, let's go up a couple levels while we're at it. Alright, let's go back in. Let's try something new here. Let's grab spray. Let's grab this alpha, and let's do H tiles. see what happens. It might work. Turn the flow down. I'm just thinking, I'm trying to figure out a way on the fly here. If you guys don't have any good neck alphas, like people have like almost like turkey necks, like there's like little bumps on them. If you guys don't have access or can't afford to buy like a bunch of extra displacements from the XYZ, because they have a really good neck one, I'm trying to think of a nice way to get some of these bumps. So I want, what I would probably do is take a big bar. You could make something in Photoshop, but basically what you want is like kind of like this shape here. Turn my flow way down, like kind of an elongated thing like that. So you have a bit of a turkey neck skin or bumpy skin. So I'm just going to add some to the back of his neck right now. But what you should do probably is adjust. Like right now I have 4 tiling. All I really want is the elongation of 1. So it's just like a cheap way of me getting like yeah, there you go. Well, just a fast way of me getting the elongation, but you probably don't want to actually tile it like that, but it seems to be working pretty good. And if you want to inflate some a little more than others, but butterfingers. I'm gonna inflate some more than others. I'm just kind of just go in and pick some, make them a bit stronger if you want. Oh, stupid lazy mouse. Then just kind of shave up. So just kind of go in and just, I don't want that wrinkle to be like perfect, right? Like I want to have some like cross hatching stuff. What's going on here? Oh, it's on my alpha. That was kind of cool actually. The way it was doing those wrinkles for me. Let's break those wrinkles up a bit there. These ones probably get really deep. Those are kind of attached like the turkey neck down here. But I'm not, like I said, I don't want to like try to make them awesome right now because I kind of do though. But I want reference before I do this so I can not make it up. Flourishes. What are flourishes? Fiber mesh, I would not use it for game stuff. I know some people do, but I personally don't. So like a technique that I would do to make that fiber mesh is basically you make one hair texture, right? A single hair, and then you just put that and you place like a little card or like a little triangle on that hair, and then you just kind of got to hand place a chunk of them, and then just keep duplicating it around. I'll try to go over it when we do the hair stuff. It's not that difficult. It's just time consuming. You could also add though, because people get ingrown hairs. That's not something you're going to do on the obviously on the actual cards. So what you could do is say standard brush again, spray. Let's grab like maybe this little guy right here. There is a surface mimic, scruff, not scruff, but like razor burn kind of thing. But for me, it's like a little too strong. I'll look at that in just a minute here. So what I tend to do is, turn the placement up on this, and then just kind of tweak it until I get the kind of something like that. Okay, so let's make it a bit smaller. So you can kind of you can see some like little razor bump things, which a lot of men would have from shaving. So that plus some some little, what do you call them? Some cards would look pretty good. Just don't do what I just did, and make sure you start a mark target of this before you start putting this stuff on, because you're not going to want it on the lips. You're going to have to be careful how you put it on. Some will be bigger than others, right? So that's how I've always done stuff in the past. It just takes, sometimes it takes a little bit to get just the right look, but not stubble. That's how I've done like razor burn and stuff in the past. It kind of helps when you have a little bit of that when you're adding like hair stubble as well. Now you can put some over here if you want. Okay, what was the other question? Oh, that? Oh my God. I can explain right now how I did that, but I probably won't go over it in class because it's like it's a small thing, but it takes a long time. So basically, um, what you do is I took, okay, so I made the base mesh of that in Maya. Let me pull that image back up. All right. So I made the base shape, right, of this thing in Maya, okay? And then what I did is I brought the base shape into ZBrush, okay? And with the mask, I kind of drew, I didn't draw the details on, but I just drew on like a big area. Oh, sorry. Also in Maya, I laid out the UVs, all right? So I did the base shape and laid out the UVs in Maya before I did the high poly. This is the starting of my high poly. And then I brought it into ZBrush and divided it a bunch of times. And then with a mask, I kind of drew out, where I wanted this big swatch of detail, right? And then I colored in my mask, okay? And then I transferred my mask to texture, okay? And then in Photoshop, I took that texture and using the pen tool, I basically made this pattern, okay? So I found out how it tiled. So I think it was like a little swirl like this and then up like that, and then it'll repeat it again with a little swirl. So yeah, it was like this, like piece. It's just duplicated, and then it's upside down here, and then it's duplicated, and then all the way around, and then in the middle here I have this little crest, and that's what the whole pattern is all the way around. So I made that pattern, and then I laid it out on the texture in Photoshop. From the texture is from the mask that I made, right? That makes sense so far. And then what I did is I took like there's like a little tiling like bump image I found, and I put it behind that. So basically what I'm doing is I'm creating the mask in Photoshop, all right? And then I exported that, and it's just like a black and white mask. And then I exported that from Photoshop and brought it into ZBrush as an alpha. And I did the little displace thing that I showed you guys earlier with the head. So it displaced all those details with one like little slider. But it was really time consuming because I had to lay out the mask to fit the UVs like perfectly. But it was almost like that whole thing, like other than obviously like all the little like dents and stuff, and like all these little creases here, that was done in ZBrush. But everything else is just a mask for each piece. It took forever, but I did get faster at it eventually. Yeah, that's just a ZBrush render. I just a few different lights and then a few different passes and then just composite in Photoshop. For those, you don't really. It's my tips for that are always just use like a basic, like your basic material here, or something that has a bit of like wax to it, like the waxiness, the wax modifiers, just to give it a little bit of subsurface, and that's it. And then you're going to do a bunch of different renders in ZBrush and then composite them all in Photoshop. Now, I would honestly not do that again like that. I would probably just drop it in KeyShot for a beauty shot and add some lights because it's way easier. But yeah, that's where that's at. So anyway, that's basically my, what time is it? 3:42. Oh, it's been a pretty good time today. That's basically my workflow for the head. Now, obviously, I'll probably go in still. I might say like, oh, I want, this, to be really inflated, like right here or something. This one part of the eye crease. There's lots of different changes I'll probably make, right? Here and there. But like that's the main like workflow that I'm using for most things that I do. So maybe I may want that crease a bit deeper. And that's really it. So it's just a combination of things and looking for different details. Eventually, your eye will kind of get trained enough to like look for like balances and like things like that to like say like, okay, this detail's too strong, it's hurting the overall piece. What am I doing? Or this detail can be punched up a little bit because it'll look better. You know, so it's just I wish I had a better way of describing how to make stuff look good, but really balance is the key word, balancing like form and details. So nothing is too overpowering. And that's what's bugging me about the lip right now. The lip is too overpowering detail wise. Make a little vein here. Let's knock it down a bit. So that's under the skin. So yeah, there we go. So that's basically it. So yeah, the parts of me, just so you guys know, the parts that I don't like about this, I talked about it already, is just this upper lip. To me, it just looks messy. That's like a projection error almost right there. Like I must have screwed something up. This side looks better. Like this side looks good to me. So I don't know what I did on this part right here. It just looks weird. Obviously, inside the lips, I need to open the mouth. Yeah, basically that's it. Details are a bit strong, but remember, it's okay for the details to be a little bit strong, especially when you're looking at it from like this view. So if we hit like render, they'll probably soften out quite a bit here. Let's see. Yeah, they're not bad. They're not too strong. And plus, once you get like a skin shader and everything on there, it'll be even softer. And see, even from this distance, it's good because you can, if I were to show off the model, this is another thing I'll look at a lot from a distance. If you were to show off the model here, you can still see the like specular breakup from the skin pores. That's something you kind of want, right? Like you don't want to, like you don't want to zoom out and he just looks smooth. So I'm also gonna, and this is usually a time also where I'll add a new layer and kind of just look at them again from like a bit of a distance and say, like, okay, well I could probably push, you know, some of these forms a little bit more, like right here maybe. You know, maybe I could push like this little triangle a bit more here. So when you zoom out, you just get like a bit more like interesting like kind of looks. So it's just a good time to kind of go in and balance some overall shapes. Because now that you have the detail on there, you can really see how strong the shapes are going to be, right? So just like a little nudge here and there can make a big difference. So yeah, so that's a great time to kind of do that kind of thing. Just kind of push, right? I don't see this line. I want to make this a little bit deeper on his forehead there. More interesting, maybe get a little more of a crevice kind of going on right there. Just so all those forms kind of pop a bit. This is where I say it kind of leaves the realm of just like straight up trying to make it as realistic as possible to like, hey, I want to make this like really nice artistic piece. And so sometimes pushing forms and trying to catch like extra shadows here and there is what you need to, is what you want to do, right? Like because it makes the overall piece look better. It might not be one-to-one likeness anymore, or it might not be this or that, but like at least it looks cool. That's the goal for art, right? Is to make it look cool. That's my goal. So I think I like those shapes in the face. That cheek looks pretty good. The temple's looking pretty good over here. A nice like ridge around the eye. Forehead's looking good. Probably push some more nose shapes a bit, but that's fine for now. So I like that. Yeah, and that's basically my head detailing workflow in a nutshell. There's nothing really that I do that I haven't showed you at this point for the head. I think so. The surface mimic stuff, texture XYZ stuff. It's how I sculpt like the extra wrinkles after.
what I just did with like a little bit of push and pull at the end there. Um, I'm trying to think of any like technical things that I haven't done that might help you guys, but I don't think there is any. It's pretty straightforward. I don't know if it's straightforward, but it's a pretty it's pretty all over the place workflow. There's just a lot of things I'm kind of jumping around, different techniques I'm jumping around with. Um, as you can see, you don't have to. So like for back to the master stuff, you don't have to be a master of like something like a program to get the benefits from it, right? Like, so that's why I said pick your battles earlier. So we got awesome like details here from Mari, and I'm by no means a master of that. We got great cloth out of here from Marvelous Designer, and there's so much to learn, like more to learn with that. And but like you just gotta pick your battles, and what it comes down to in the end is your own artistic eye, right? Like train yourself to look for balance and form and things like that, and how the light is hitting the surface and how the shadows are coming about. And you don't have to be an expert in every program in order to know something looks correct, right? Like if you just know what looks good and what doesn't, and you have the tools to achieve, like say, like most of that, then you can go on ZBrush and sculpt and balance and do what you need to do to make everything look good. So that's basically my philosophy. Like I could be, I'd rather have a trained eye than know every program inside and out. So that's what I'm trying to get across to you guys in this class is that like we're definitely going over a lot of techniques and there's a lot to learn, but I don't want you to feel overwhelmed if one thing is too technical or anything, because in the end, what matters is just learning how to see. Okay, so that's the most important thing is learning how to see, because programs are always going to change, techniques are always going to change, but as long as you keep your eyes sharp and your knowledge of forms and anatomy and everything like that, like sharp, that's what matters. That is what matters. I went to art school, and that's where it's, well, I drew my whole life. And so I'll just give you a little bit about my background. Scott, I don't usually talk about that a whole lot. I grew up, ever since I was a little kid, I drew. And my aunt, or sorry, my grandma um, was an artist, and they always encouraged me to draw. So I was drawing ever since I was like 3. But then when I was about 16 or so, I was like, this is stupid, I'm done. I'm so sick of drawing. Like I was a teenager, right? I didn't give a crap anymore. And then when I was in high school, I didn't do anything. I like cleaned carpets or just did whatever for like a few years. And then when I was like 22, I went to school for graphic design, and that's when I learned about 3D. And I was like, graphic design is not something I want to do, but 3D looks cool. So I went to a fine arts college in Detroit, and that's where I had some. I didn't even get into 3D until like my second year there. But my first year was all like a lot of drawing with like drawing teachers. We had one from Russia, and we had one from he was from U.S. somewhere, but I'm not sure where. But they were super awesome. And I mean, they like made people cry and stuff, but like in a good way because they're like they pushed you. And so we did like a lot of life drawing, and that's when I really started to like hone in my like eye for like light and form and shadow. That's when it like really started. Now, obviously, I had some sort of predisposition for that growing up and drawing all the time, but like I really like I really started like getting it when I was in college there, and then ever since then, just working in 3D every day, you know, in my spare time, it just gets sharper and sharper. So it's taken a while. It takes a long time, and it's always evolving. It's always changing. But I have seen artists go from like not real good to like super awesome in like 2 years. It just really depends on how much you work on it. So, and some people, like what I said, will have the predisposition to like get it faster, and some people will take longer. But I definitely think it's a learnable skill, right? Like I think some people, I don't like people like, oh, you're talented, you're lucky you were born with that. Well, like screw that, man. Like I know people, like I said, I know people that were terrible and now they're good, and they have just spent time and learned how to do it. So I mean, I go to work. I have my 8 hour or more. Depends what we're working on. Like sometimes I'll be at work for 8 hours, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. It all balances out. Then I come home and hang with my wife for a little while, and then I'll come in the computer at night, um, and try. I try to stop. I try to limit myself um, to just a couple hours a night because I don't want to sit in the computer all day anymore. I feel like 8 hours at work is enough. But I realized that like I have other obligations. Like I mean, this class is one. I do want to do personal art and other things. So I try not to spend more than 2 hours a day. Sometimes I'll spend a little more on the weekend. And lately I've been really busy because we just bought a house, so I've been out for the last like few weeks, like dealing with that. But it can be tiring, and sometimes I'll burn out. But I don't want to touch anything. Like after this class, I probably won't do anything for like personal work for like a while. Um, but then like eventually after like a month of doing nothing, I'll be like, oh, I kind of want to do something again. So it's a balance. My wife I think gets mad at me sometimes for like being on the computer when we're trying to watch a movie. She'll like want to hang out and I'll be on the computer, but yeah, thanks. Mm, awesome. Yeah, Tetra XYZ stuff. How would you say we can work smarter than harder? Uh, that just comes with practice, I think. I don't think there's ever a time when you just like are able to always work smarter than harder. Like especially when in a medium where you're like there's always new technology. So sometimes like you spend a whole day thinking you're doing the right thing, and then you're like, oh, that was a wasted day because I screwed it up, or like that's not how you do it. But the more you work and stuff like this, like for me, ZBrush, I can now work smarter than harder for the most part. So I don't end up like I used to resculpt stuff all the time, so I didn't like the way it was looking. But now since I've sculpted so many clothes, sculpted so many faces, like I kind of just know when something's turning out the way I want, and I can like stop myself before it gets too bad or like something like that. But there's no real. I think just experience will make you work smarter. It's not something that there's no like say like hey, if you want to work smarter just do this. That's not the way. I mean, if there is any tip for that, I would say the better you know anatomy, the smarter you're going to be able to work because you make less mistakes. Same with like um, clothing. Like if you understand like how clothes drape, which is a very hard thing to understand, I feel, then you'll work smarter because you will spend less time like fixing your folds and stuff. Is personal stuff important when you work professionally? Um, yes and no. I mean, it's important to me because I'm kind of a competitive person, and it really bugs me when I see like awesome stuff on ArtStation like over and over again. I'm like, oh, it should be me doing that stuff. But at the same time, it's not. You don't really need it. Like if you have a good job and you're happy with your job, there's no real reason to do personal stuff unless you just enjoy doing it, right? Like that's yeah, that's about it. Like every once in a while I'll think of a project. I'm like, that sounds like fun, but then I get like partway through and I won't finish it. I sometimes envy the people that like can do like a lot of freelance stuff. Like that's their job because they're always working on different things. But at the same time, like, I don't envy them because like it's hard to. You always have to be worrying about like where your next job is and stuff like that. So who do I think my biggest competition is? I'm not answering that question. There's a lot of good people out there now. Um, what do companies like Naughty? What do they look for? Like I don't love talking about companies, but that's a good question because that's something I'm sure they would be okay with me answering. Naughty Dog looks for good anatomy skills. They really put a lot into like the high poly. They want to see a good high poly. That's the most important part of the test for them. So if you notice the stuff Naughty Dog does is very realistic looking people. So stuff with your portfolio, that like if you have that kind of stuff in your portfolio, that'd be good. And then Epic, they look for, it's hard for me to say. Cause they do a lot of different kinds of characters there. I think they look for like a really well-rounded artist in general. So someone that can do like some hard surface, some anatomy, faces, clothing. Like they look for it all, really. And their art test is pretty difficult, to be honest. But both places are great places. They're just a little different in what they do. A lot of Naughty Dog really does a lot of realistic people, and Epic does more. They do like monsters and stuff too. It's more of that, so it's just a difference. Uh, it depends. Art test time wise, Naughty Dog is pretty good at giving you as much time as you need because they understand that you're busy with other things usually. Um, Epic is timed, but they're flexible as well. So if you just tell them like, "Hey, I'm busy doing this, and I can't do this," they will give time. As long as really, it's just like you got to keep in contact with them. Say like, "Hey, recruiter person, like,
I have this much time to do this art test. I'm going to be out this week, or I can't work on it this week. Can I have like this time? And usually they're very understanding, especially if you give like incremental like updates and you feel like you have something worth showing. It's not done. But hey, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm doing this week. I probably won't be able to finish it until a couple weeks from now, and just explain why. Then usually companies are pretty open, especially if like your progress is promising, right? Because they're not gonna be like, oh, you're awesome, but you're too slow. No, it's not gonna happen in my experience. Show more characters in their style. If you have one really good character in their style, that's usually enough. What you're trying to do is just catch the art director's eye, usually, right? Like, or the lead artist's eye. Like, if you show them, if your portfolio has one thing that's really awesome, usually that's enough to catch an eye, at least for me. Hmm. What should be the main thing in a portfolio for a rookie likeness? Full character heads, just see where. For a rookie, it's a good question. I try not to look at it as when people apply if they're like rookie. Like, see, sometimes you get people that are like fresh out of school and they're like awesome, and so. But generally, I don't know. I just like to see a nice range. If I can see someone that does like good clothing, pretty realistic faces and anatomy, even if it's not perfect, if they've tried to do some like weapons or like hard surface stuff, just like so just so they understand like kind of the workflows there. Yeah, just like a range of stuff is usually pretty good. I don't always look for topology and UVs because I kind of understand that a lot of times that doesn't get taught properly in school or at all. So like that's something that can be trained really easy. So it's not really a big deal to me. Definitely the artistic skill is what I look for. Way people get AAA experience from. Yeah, there's lots of people that do work for AAA studios remotely. Like usually under contracts, but it happens. You just have to contact them, or they'll contact either your name's out there and they're contacting you, or you contact them and they like your portfolio. But it happens a lot, especially when stuff gets busy. Studios will start to like look for contractors, remote contractors to help finish stuff. Yeah, yeah, Jeff, that's a good call. Like badass dude, like kind of like a lead character kind of dude, woman, because they both have different anatomy. Monster's cool, mech, yeah, just a wide range. But I would say one of the biggest things is just like if you're able to do like a hero like male character, companies there's a lot of those in video games. So like or a hero female character too. There's a lot. Does Naughty Dog ever contract out character work? We've had contractors in house, but I don't know about like individuals like outside remotely. All right, guys, I think it's time. So next week we'll go over some. I'll try to do some more clothes this week and get a couple more videos up. I've actually been having fun doing those. And then next week we'll go over some UVs and topology, mostly head topology and then UVs. I'll go over clothing topology too, but it is easier than head topology, so it won't be quite as long. Cool. Well, I'm glad you learned something. Top is the best. All right, guys, I'm out. Have a good rest of your day. Cheers, guys.